Well, kids these days, it is not that they are bad, it is that we expect so much more of them. Seems like elementary school, the beginning of achievement culture that stresses out kids and parents alike.
One, two, three, and to the four. Snoop Doggy Dogg, Jason McCoy is at the door. Back for another one, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Put 'em on the Couch. Welcome, couch surfers. I am joined today by my number one man, almost said fan.
And fan. I'm a fan too.
Nelson Beaulieu.
Absolutely. But you are no Snoop Dogg.
Nelson, we are not going to give away where we are recording today. I just want to see if any of our listeners notice a difference in the quality, in our tone, in our pace, in our subject matter. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can guess where we are recording from today, we will send out a little merchandise to you.
100%.
So the way you do this is you listen, you share, you like, you rate, you do something to bring attention to yourself so that I can note that it was indeed you who followed this call to action. And as a gift to you, we will draw one lucky winner. We'll give, I don't know, a mug, a koozie, a sweatshirt, a hoodie. I'm going to give you something cool this time around. No stickers this time. I've sent out a couple stickers, but we're going to give you something substantial.
There you go.
We're going to try to align ourselves with the charity of the likes of NPR, WHQR, and others who send out mugs and T-shirts. Except we're not going to ask for $30 a month.
Do you have a mug? Do you have an NPR mug? Are you a donor?
I am a donor,
are you a sustaining member?
I don't know about sustaining, but I've done it a few times. Yes, I do have a mug and I have a shirt.
Yeah, I got all that stuff. I love NPR.
Yeah,
I love NPR.
Yeah, I'm absolutely excited about having Rachel Keith, our own local reporter, news person, journalist from WHQR, to come on in the near future and talk about the fourth branch, I guess, of government.
Yeah, we have to do that this summer, I think.
Would
I
love
know
to
we're talking about that. Yep.
Get the media in here and talk about the importance of that fourth branch of government.
What are we doing today?
Man, I thought today we would talk about living vicariously through our children. And with that, we will talk about the concept of soccer moms, I think.
Soccer mom. Oh, I love soccer mom.
Maybe talk about dads who are living out their high school dream through their children. Maybe pageant moms. I want to just talk about whether or not it's enough to just be a good parent. Do we have to spend all of our money, Nelson, all of our free time? Do we have to think about what's best for our children every single second of the day? Or is that really doing a disservice to both our children and us?
Well, it's placing a lot on them. I think that's obvious, right?
Well, and following on the heels of our last episode where we talked about what's best for children and whether or not the cell phone, and more to the point, the things that the cell phone gives people access to, particularly our children, like social media, being possibly not as beneficial as we would like to believe, I thought that, another good source of potential anxiety and depression and maybe any other number of deleterious problems children face today is just the incredible amount of pressure that parents place on them, right?
I
not just peers. Yeah, you did.
I mentioned that Politico article talked some about social media, smartphones,
sure,
and having those clinicians identifying that as a source of anxiety.
And then there was existential anxiety from the political problems.
There's a lot of parental pressures, not just around sports, but around college,
around just achieving, right? Achieving and performing.
We almost make these kids live the lives of little adults.
Well, that was what I was asking at the top of the show here, whether or not we are living vicariously through our kids, and is that always a good thing? And how do you know if you are doing, as my kids like to say, too much? You're doing too much, Dad. Yeah, I think we'll explore this concept that psychologists, sociologists, and many other culturologists refer to as achievement pressure.
Yeah.
Achievement pressure, the pressure to achieve, and what that's like for a kid. And it's unfortunate we don't have kids in here today to talk about this, but I will be talking about my children, specifically my daughter. She and I have been going through sort of a back and forth about this.
Okay.
As of recently.
Okay. I'd like to hear about Jason McCoy on the soccer field, because I don't know if our listeners know, I'm also an umpire, so I can bring that perspective. I umpire.
I hope that we do. Yeah. Well, if it's worth it, I'll give you a couple of teasers. I have shirts that I wear routinely
God.
to practice and to games, tournaments. One of them says the goal father. Another one says, I'm not shouting, I'm just using my soccer voice. Another one says world's greatest soccer dad. And I have a fourth one that is a jersey with my daughter's name and her number on it. So that might give you some insight into how obsessed or how vicariously I'm living
if I was
my daughter.
preparing for a game,
Yeah.
I would definitely notice that.
Yeah, you'd mark me.
That
right?
is something that's
I would
marked.
be in
Absolutely,
your head, right? Yeah.
absolutely. But look, hey, before we start, let's talk about soccer mom, man. So just shut your eyes, all right, and tell me what you see when I say soccer mom.
I see a middle-aged woman, probably middle to upper middle class, maybe even upper class, driving a minivan in the 1980s.
Always with a minivan.
With stickers that says, my son is an athlete, my daughter is on the honor roll. She's probably wearing sweatpants. Looks like she hasn't tried very much, but she's likely had her hair done recently, certainly is wearing some makeup, and walking around with maybe a Starbucks coffee. Those were the soccer moms that I experienced when I was growing up. Today, I think soccer moms are similar, but I envision them driving an SUV now.
Okay.
They don't always have things on their car that draw attention explicitly to their sons and daughters being on the honor roll or being an amazing athlete, but they will put, implicit tags on their car. Like, my daughter is in a soccer league, a club soccer.
Yeah.
And so definitely
a hammerhead.
You would expect, right, it's a hammerheads or a pizza or a woofa, a sticker, right? It's just, it's a little something to let everybody know, look, your kids are not in the cool club.
That's right.
My kid is in the cool club. And instead of walking around with a Starbucks coffee, they probably have one of those big Stanley mugs now.
Maybe it's filled with wine.
Not wearing jogging pants or sweats per se. They're wearing, these relatively expensive form-fitting yoga pants. I'm thinking Lululemon or something like that are designer. There's probably a pocket on there strategically located to bring maximum emphasis to the huge iPhone 20 that they're carrying around. Look, I say these things about soccer moms stereotypically, knowing full well that many of my friends are indeed soccer moms. But I also say this knowing that it's a big stereotype. Not the way they dress, but the fact that it's soccer moms. I don't know what the equivalent would be for dads, but the truth
we'll get into those. There's tons of those.
I'm a soccer dad. I'm a soccer Chad, I guess. I drive the minivan, right? The moms in our club, my daughter's travel team members' moms, they drive SUVs. I drive the minivan still. They bring the Stanley Cup. I bring a Starbucks coffee with me.
Well, let's get the politics out of the way here, because soccer mom came to us as a term in 1996 during the campaign between Bill Clinton and Bob Dole.
So there weren't really soccer moms when I was growing up in the 80s.
There were not. But it speaks to the power of the term that you could identify it with something you had as a child.
Even though we may have not called them soccer moms. Right?
They
may have just called them stay-at-home moms or...
No, I mean, soccer mom in 1996, I mean, she became a phenom, right? She became a rock star. In fact...
So she was suburban?
She was suburban, harried, had a million things on her mind.
Did she work?
Worked, absolutely, right?
And she
did have the minivan.
Middle class, maybe upper middle class?
Sure, she was a suburbanite woman.
But she was a swing voter, wasn't she?
Well, she was. She wasn't terribly political. She was analytical, thoughtful, and gettable. Mm-hmm. She was a voter who was most assuredly up for grabs.
And the CEO of the home, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And both Dole and Clinton proposed policies that would appeal to soccer moms.
So they courted the soccer moms.
Absolutely. It was, I think Dole said, well, we're going to lower your family's income tax rates. Clinton focused on school uniforms.
Now, was this literal, though? Did they really believe there was a contingent of voters out there that were soccer moms? Or did they know, look, I'm just kind of playing into the stereotype a little bit?
I'm thinking back, I think it was two Republican operatives, Alex Castellanos and Ed Gillespie, both of
I don't know Ed.
And they,
not personally, but I know of Ed.
Yeah. And Alex is still on CNN as a commentator, but I think what they saw was a cohort of voters that thought a certain way, lived in a certain area, and faced the same sort of problems. The only thing is soccer mom was, and has been ever since, a complete and total fiction, right? It's just a simple way of identifying a certain slice of the electorate that was gettable. And we've seen those changes. Now we have NASCAR dads. We've seen in 2004.
Pageant moms.
Yeah, in 2004, Biden talked about security moms, right? And in 1996, mom actually became the word of the year, right? And I think Sarah Palin tried to revive some of that in 2008 with her hockey moms. But the essential point is the same. And these are suburban people who are more tuned out than tuned in, but will likely vote and vote on issues that are important to them. The problem
Important
politically,
to their family, right? Important to their kids.
the problem politically is that people are so varied now in the things that they need in their focus areas that nobody's just worried about their kids. They're also worried about the economy. They're also worried about security and abortion and, crime and any number of issues. And so trying to micro-target these people as just concerned about the needs of their children isn't necessarily accurate.
As a soccer dad, and I think I speak for some of my soccer mom friends, we're concerned about, gas tax because we're driving to tournaments every month.
That's right.
We're concerned about how difficult it is when you only have two parents in the household. I'm going to start pushing for polyamory on the show, ladies and gentlemen, because my wife and I, we have to divide and conquer. My son and my daughter both play sports, and this upcoming tournament in Myrtle Beach, my wife and I have been arguing over who's going to go and who's going to stay back. I'm going to stay back, and we'll take one for the household team. Stay back, keep these dogs that I never wanted in the first place. And
hey, they're listening.
And I know. And I'm going to go to the 2 recreation games this in a couple weeks for my son, and my mom, and my daughter, and my wife will go down to Myrtle Beach and enjoy this big tournament. And they'll get to eat out. So I'm concerned about the taxes on restaurants are.
Well, as much as the political fiction of
else?
Soccer Mom doesn't,
hotel taxes.
As much as that doesn't bear fruit in reality, the harried description of these parents is something that I think is real.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe you guys don't think about how you're going to vote, or there's very little. Are there politics that enter the soccer field? Do you guys ever sit there and talk about politics or Trump or?
No, I don't think we talk about big level politics. We talk about small with a little lowercase p, micropolitics, what you might call small d Democrat or d democracy. I don't know. We routinely talk about why don't we have a soccer complex here in Wilmington? Why don't we have more trainers for our team?
They talked about building one. They
the Hammerheads are building one right now, but it'll be exclusively for the Hammerheads, right?
Right.
Pieces got some out near Monkey Junction. But, WUFA, we've got the fields over. I don't know if we rent or own them or what, over at Ogden Elementary School. They're okay. Are they as good as, the soccer complex in Wilson, North Carolina? No, we just went there for a tournament a few weeks ago. And, one thing's for sure, when I say the word Wilson, Nash County, you're not thinking, man, they're the best at anything necessarily. But, boy, food truck rodeo there, lots of parking, concession stand, lots of people working for the organization out and about on the field. The fields looked amazing. The refs were amazing. The whole thing just organized to the T. And obviously, when I say Raleigh or Charlotte, been to some of those tournaments, those complexes, those soccer complexes are amazing as well. As well, you would assume they would be since, it's Charlotte, it's Raleigh. There's a larger tax base. There's more money floating around. But, yeah, we routinely talk amongst ourselves like, if Wilson can do it, why can't New Hanover County do it, right? We have quite a few parks. We have a large parks and recreation contingent. But I know we don't prioritize parks in our budget that much. And I also understand that soccer's probably not the place where Parks and Rec are going to put their money, because soccer has and continues to be a middle to upper middle class sort of experiment.
You would think with the fees that they would be able to afford some nicer facilities.
The thing we don't talk about is fees, and I think it's because we're upper middle class to upper class. You never hear the parents
let's talk about
the
fees on this show. Like, let's get down to brass tacks, all right? So
what's it cost to be a soccer dad?
What does it cost? I mean, I know, and this is anecdotal, I know some of my friends do this. I know my sister is a dance mom.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you right away, soccer dads and moms are not investing nearly as much money day to day, week to week, month to month as pageant moms and dads are. I know that for a fact.
Pageant or dance?
Pageant, dance, either one of those. Pageants and
Cheerleading.
dance.
Okay.
I think cheerleading, pageant, and dance are probably among some of the most expensive endeavors that you can put your kids into.
I know, and
But
again,
yes,
anecdotal.
travel soccer, travel basketball, there's still some pretty heavy monetary incursions, if you
So
will.
I have some friends. Hopefully they're listening, and I think we talked a while back. They're upper middle class as well, and I think between soccer, which their son is in, and dance, which their daughter is in, I think they're gone every weekend.
Yep.
They're often split up, usually split up.
Usually split up, yep.
Maybe that's a draw. And
Yeah, I don't know. Not if you're not if you're having 2 hotel rooms.
yeah, that's
Right.
dude. And then I think they said all in, right? So we're food, lodging, fees.
Monthly's about what?
We're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000 a year.
Right.
A year.
Yes.
And when I
so
say
you're
upper
talking
middle
about
class, I'm not talking
$2,000 a
about-
month. That's what I figured. Yeah.
Yeah, about $2,000 a month.
So it's the daycare dream, not deferred, but continuing. Right after
Yeah,
daycare,
right.
you think you've got your kids in public school, and it's not going to be that expensive, and boom, they want to play sports and they want to play travel.
See, I'm
sports, or
very
they-
lucky, right? I have 2 daughters,
Yeah.
and they're both not good at anything. Neither one is
Stop
is
it.
very good.
They're very smart and beautiful young ladies.
Yeah.
Kind.
Middle management material, to be sure. They're
No.
in no way, shape,
They'd
or
make
form
2
are they
hella
exceptional.
influencers on social media. Come on, who are you kidding?
But I
know they're popular kids. If you're listening, Autumn and Meadow, he doesn't mean a thing he just said.
And if you're listening, Mango and other dog,
Peaches.
Peaches, Jason loves
Daddy
you too.
loves you, and I can't wait to stay home with you in a couple of weeks.
But no, they just they did play soccer, they did play rec soccer, and by the time they were getting to the point where they were ready to travel, they both wanted to stop.
Okay. Yeah.
Both of them did, and we asked them a little while ago. We said, "Do you regret us not pushing you?"
Pushing, yeah.
And they both said, "Yeah." Because
Really?
because all of their friends.
Say that again for my wife and for my daughter.
Well, hold on. I don't regret it.
No, of course not.
But I don't regret it.
But they are thinking
They
back,
asked to
thinking,
stop, and we
"Man,
said, "Yeah."
okay.
And I mean, they didn't ask to stop. They said, "We don't want to be doing this every Saturday." But now that their friends are in lacrosse and in soccer,
And they're like, why didn't we do that a little more? Why didn't you push us a
that
little
looks
more?
like it would be fun.
Yeah.
But it has opened up the lack of resources that we're putting to those endeavors have opened up a whole host of other things
Sure.
that we are able to do and enjoy together as a family.
Let's take a bit of a deeper look at that conversation you just mentioned on the other side of this break, Nelson.
All right.
Welcome back, couch listeners, couch surfers. I was going to call you couch potatoes, but that probably wouldn't be appropriate. Thanks for joining us again. This is our 49th episode, Nelson, of Put 'em on the Couch.
Wow, that's
Again,
incredible.
I'm Jason McCoy, your host, joined by my wonderful colleague, friend, and esteemed better half, Nelson Beaulieu. We are talking about soccer moms living vicariously through your kids, pageant dads, whatever you want to call it. The idea is that clearly parents
The
have a
caricature.
big job. They don't just care for and make sure their kids' needs are met. All parents, I think, Nelson, wouldn't you agree, want what's best for their kids, no matter the cost. We want to raise and develop independent kids who are good at things. We want to leave them better off than we were. We want to make sure they have a better life than we had.
Well,
To
yeah,
that end, we got to
absolutely.
try to give them as many opportunities as possible. And so
Yeah, but I think
you were saying on the other side, Nelson, your kids, you asked them because they didn't go into travel soccer and didn't do anything that like all in on anything in particular, right? They were just
Right.
average kids when it comes to athletics. And you asked, hey, do you wish mom and dad had pushed you a little more? Because when we had the conversation, you guys just said you didn't want to be doing this every weekend. And so we stopped pushing. And they said,
that they wished that they had been pushed and that they had continued on in an athletic of some kind,
and
in a sport
essentially
of some
that's
kind.
because they've got friends now in high school that are into sports, that are doing sports.
that are doing it,
and they
that-
can't really be part of that group.
No,
At least not all the time. They can be part of that group.
right?
outside
Yeah,
of
they're
sports, but-
they're certainly part of
Right.
it, but they can't stay
Well,
there.
did you
They
ask
can't-
them how would you have had me do it differently? Like, what do you mean by push? Did you ask them? Make you do it,
Make you do
or
it.
make you do it, pay you to do it. Like,
No, not pay.
Okay.
Just make you do it.
But you were saying, look, you don't have any regrets as a parent because you believe it opened up other opportunities for you and your family.
My children both excel academically.
Right.
They excel. Well, you know, I've seen them in their own ways with their own. This is without sports. I've seen them struggle with the demands of being a teenager and the 2020s in the United States. I've seen them, struggle with all sorts of stressors, and I wonder what it would be to put even more on. They want it when they're not in it. Reason they didn't want to do it, and it was taking away from
some
other opportunities that they did want to explore.
Talk a little bit about some of those opportunities as a family. What were you doing instead?
Well, I think
were you still going to Charleston? Or?
Yeah, we were going to Charleston.
Yeah.
We were going. Sometimes we'd go for a weekend to Kinston and explore some of the areas here.
But you weren't
in
just
North
going to the cow
Carolina.
pasture that was converted into a soccer field and sitting out there and
contending
with the blazing heat.
I think there was something somewhat fulfilling. I'm not saying you can. There's a million ways to skin a cat, right?
Yeah.
But I think having longer, deeper conversations about any number of topics rather than, hey, you missed this pass and they were wide open, or just sort of exploring their own interests, their own enjoyments. My oldest daughter is an incredible artist. My youngest daughter loves to write.
So what you're saying is you still had an opportunity to parent, to maybe apply pressure, in some ways maybe live vicariously, overparent. I mean, we said earlier that your kids are beautiful. Your kids are artistic now, you're telling me. That's artistic, not autistic. They're also very intelligent, very kind, friendly, probably popular. I mean, gotta admit, that's a lot of fodder for you as a parent, especially for someone who, like yourself, probably had none of those things growing up. Good looks, popularity, anything like
funny.
that. So you could overparent, apply the pressure, and live vicariously through them.
I don't know, and maybe I'm naive or just not self-aware when it comes to this area. I think for Amanda, that's she's always taken a little bit more pride in that. I'm just proud that they're functioning and they're happy,
and they're healthy.
There's not that everybody talks about what they want for their kids, and I just want them to be independent and to enjoy themselves. I don't really. I'm proud of them.
Yeah.
But I certainly
not
don't.
for any specific reason. In other words,
I don't take any pride other than the fact that I've kept them safe and happy and healthy.
That your daughters have big, thick, wonderful hair as teenagers.
That is not on me.
It's not on you. Literally, it's not on him, ladies and gentlemen. But it doesn't make you feel a little bit better. You're not like living vicariously through that wonderful bounty of hair they have.
No, but I mean, obviously,
because I have to admit, as someone who used to pride himself on having really, quote, good hair, as I begin to age even more in my 50s, my hair's thinning a bit. Still got a wonderful head of hair. Still very dark. I don't dye it. I know you're jealous. But I look at my son and my daughter's hair, and I'm envious, I have to admit.
Are you really?
And every time I hear someone say, Oliver, your hair is so cute, I hearken back to those days when people would say, man, your hair is so beautiful, Jason. How did you get it that black? Are you Native American? Are you dyeing your hair? So they say these kinds of things to Oliver and Cece. Oh, my God, how do you get such beautiful natural highlights in your hair? Or how is it so naturally, wavy and vibrant? What kind of shampoo are you using? Admittedly, I don't hear those things about myself anymore. And so it's nice, I have to admit. Maybe I just have lower self-esteem than you.
Let's talk about
maybe
that from a psychological
Maybe I've got unresolved childhood trauma. And, I want to talk about that stuff.
What is it about sports? Because, after you answer this, we'll get into some of the history because you can look back. There's so many examples of this.
Yeah.
But what is it about sports or just having kids that allow us to sort of live the pieces of our lives that we didn't get to live through them and watch them do the things that we maybe wanted to do but couldn't do?
Well, for some, I think it really is about unresolved trauma. I said that kind of flippantly a few seconds ago, but the truth is, I think many researchers would agree that parents, it could also be grandparents. I mean, it could be anyone really whose job it is to mentor or raise children. It's possible that they are trying to live and come to terms with their unresolved childhood traumas, and that could be.
Did you have a trauma?
Sure,
because you couldn't.
Look, I'm pretty sure I have childhood trauma. For instance, I was a very good youth baseball player, but I was a little bit intimidated by the thought of playing baseball at higher levels, like high school and college, because the ball was coming in hot, And by comparison, I wasn't as strong. I wasn't as fast anymore. Same thing with respect to football, but even earlier. I was, athletic. I could run, catch a ball, throw a ball, but was I the strongest? Was I the fastest? Was I capable of taking a hit? Maybe, but I wasn't going to chance it. No matter what grade I was in, I wasn't going to chance it. I was relatively smart. I would like to think that my coursework came relatively easy to me when I was in high school, but by no means was I straight A. I may have graduated 30th out of about 120 students. So I was, in the lower 1/3 of the graduating class. I didn't have particularly good relationships with my teachers. No one ever said he's the smartest. I didn't get to skip a bunch of grades. I didn't make it into what's called AIG. Back then, it would have been called advanced placement, accident excellence. Yeah. Nobody ever mistaked me for being, a genius or a wunderkind. So when my daughter is born and she is talking faster than everybody in her daycare, and the daycare employees are talking to her like she's an adult, and she's being made the head of the class, and she's reminding the kids her age or older of the rules, and she starts school, and she's the top student in every grade she's been in all the way up to 3rd grade, if not the top, one of the top students. And, her teachers and all of these supplemental instructors coming to us saying she's got a gift, she's special. And then I see her outside kicking the soccer ball when she's 2 or 3, and she's kicking it harder than I feel like she should. And I start showing people videos, and they're like, yeah, she's got something. People that played soccer. And so we continue cultivating that, and she just loves it. She's young and undersized and plays an outrageous soccer game at age 9 and can hold her own against, girls twice her size and several years older than her. She's always the leading scorer on any team she's been on. She's just an all-around good athlete. And yeah, I wasn't. It didn't come as easy to me. And so I remember grinding and working, and I didn't have parents that pushed me. And I kind of always felt a certain kind of way about that. Like, why doesn't my dad push me harder? Why doesn't my mom push me harder? Why don't they stay at practice and watch me? Why don't they talk to me and strategize? And so now I have this opportunity with my daughter, who's a bit smarter and a bit more conscious and a bit more, I guess you would say, well-rounded than I was. And I feel like I can talk to her about strategy and stuff. And last night was the first time she ever said to me, she was lying in her bed and said, I need to talk to you. And she said, Dad, I'm embarrassed. I feel like when you yell at me on the soccer field, you're mad. I hate it when you call me by my full name, Cecilia Reese. I hate this, I hate that, I hate this. And I'm like, well, do you not want me to go to practices anymore? She goes, no, I love practices. You're always quiet. I said, so you don't want me to be passionate and like strategize and talk to you at all when you're on the soccer field playing a game? She goes, no. I want you to just celebrate me, say all the good stuff. Don't ever tell me if I'm doing anything wrong. And I'm like, that's going to be hard for me. Dad's a teacher. I'm a critic. I've always been that way. And Cece, I'm sorry, but I feel like I want this for you. She goes, but yeah, have you ever considered that maybe I don't want it? And I'm like, you don't want to play soccer? She goes, no, I just don't need another coach. I already have one. Throughout this whole day, I've been thinking about our conversation last night. It's been resonating with me. It's been bubbling back up. And I knew that for this podcast today, it was perfect timing because I wanted to get a little bit of this off my chest. And yeah, it was not fun to hear that last night from my 9-year-old daughter. It was almost re-traumatizing to me because, I erroneously believed that what she wanted is exactly what I wanted. And the way she wants it is exactly the way I think she wants it. But that's not true. The way I want her to want it is the way I didn't have it.
Yeah.
You're right? And so I'm not, and I do think I make mistakes by saying to her, well, babe, I'm just applying pressure to you because that's the way to make things grow, right? You put a little pressure on something and it'll create a diamond. You put a little pressure on a bone, it makes it grow. On a muscle, it makes it stronger. On an immune system, it makes it stronger. So I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to put pressure on you because I know you can handle it.
Just as he's beginning to swing, I dropped my whole bag of clubs. And he would stop and look at me, those teeth gritting. And he'd start again. I'd throw a dozen golf balls in front of his ball.
But he'd never push me over the edge. He would take me right up to the breaking point and he'd back off.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard
isn't
to.
it?
It's hard to know.
And I didn't mean
the
to like
difference.
let my guts out here.
No. It's just hard to know the difference between
that line.
between pushing
Mm-hmm.
and
Living vicariously.
and
Right.
crushing.
Yeah,
Right?
and also, what's the motivation?
What is the motivation?
If
That's hard to know,
consciously
too.
or unconsciously, I'm trying to heal my own childhood traumas, and I'm using my daughter to do it, then that's horrible. That's disgusting. I need therapy, right?
Well,
but if I'm genuinely
we all
trying
probably
to
need therapy.
help my daughter become the best she can be, and that's a different story. But yeah, where does the means justify the ends? I mean, I've been thinking about King Richard, Venus and Serena Williams' dad. I've been thinking about Michael Jackson's dad. I've been thinking about Tiger Woods' dad.
Well, let's explore that for a minute, though, because all right, let's start with Tiger Woods.
Well,
right?
if we look at Tiger Woods' dad, right? Look at that documentary. You look at his dad, and you think that's horrible. His dad was damn near abusive.
He was.
But now, did he create a champion? Yes. Would Tiger Woods have been the champion he was without his dad? Maybe, possibly. We won't know, right?
Right.
But when you ask Tiger Woods today, he would say, I mean, I think he said many times, my dad made me who I am. He loves his dad.
So without the sacrifices of mom, who took me all to the teacher golf tournaments, dad, who's not here, but who instilled in me this work ethic to fight for what I believe in, chase after my dreams. Nothing's ever going to be given to you. Everything's going to be earned. If you don't go out there and put in the work, you don't go out and put in the effort, one, you're not going to get the results. But two, more importantly, you don't deserve it.
Yeah, but he, that was, if you watch that documentary,
I did.
He put a lot onto his kid. Not just pressure.
Yeah.
His father based his happiness, his own happiness, on what his son was achieving, his relationship with his son,
exactly.
and that's just
that's
a lot
problem,
of pressure.
Right?
That is a lot of pressure.
Never
I'm not
mind
talking
all
about
the
pressure to
infidelity
win.
and all that other stuff about keeping secrets from the family.
Yeah,
right?
and again, I'm not talking about the pressure to win. I'm talking about the pressure to make your parents happy.
Yeah, no,
I
I'll
think
agree.
that is crushing.
If I'm communicating to my kid, or if those listening are communicating to their kids, whether you're doing it on purpose or not, that your love you give them is based upon how much success they give you in return. I mean, that's terrible. I certainly don't want my daughter to believe that I love her less, that I'm less proud of her, that I'm less invested in her, just if she doesn't score, or if she doesn't try hard enough, or if she's not listening to me carefully enough on the soccer field.
Well,
I'm beginning to fear that might
how do you know
be
that,
happening.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to start. Is how do you know if you're pushing too hard?
I think
maybe
when your kid
tells
is
you.
telling you, yeah.
Maybe when your kid tells you.
And I'm lucky that I have a child who is, that I have a relationship that I've built with her that's strong enough for her to feel comfortable coming to me and saying this, right? Like, most kids aren't going to say to their overzealous, over-achievement oriented, over-pressuring parents, hey, could you just chill? I think you're actually hurting me. I think I would do better just listening to my coach.
I bet you Tiger did. I bet you Venus and Serena did.
And
at
I
some
bet their
point,
dads
and
didn't
I bet
care.
their son did.
Michael Jackson's dad, I bet they didn't care, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm maybe better, or my daughter is just really good at manipulating me and getting what she needs. But I feel like I'm pretty good for having listened. I feel like I'm pretty good for exploring this on the podcast today. I feel like.
Well, let me ask you another question, because this is something I really wanted to explore
I want to go back real
with
quick.
this fight.
I wasn't vicarious. You said, is it making you better? Is it making you feel better? Is it making you feel successful when they win? And yeah, the truth is, I'll admit it. When my son blocks a goal in soccer, or he scores a goal, or my daughter makes a great pass and the person subsequently scores that she's passing it to, or she blisters one in from distance, yeah, I probably celebrate both inside my body and I let it out.
Well, there's that bucket, but then there's another bucket that I'm curious about, and it's the group where they know that their kid, they don't expect that of their kid. Maybe they hope for it, maybe they don't. What is it that these families and these children are getting if they're not going to be Venus and Serena Williams, if they're not going to be on Dance Moms on that awful show, if they're not going to be the top, if they're not going to be that? What is the value of the investment?
Well, I mean, in the Netherlands back in 2013, there was a group of researchers who published in the journal Plus One who found that there was a benefit to applying this pressure to kids, to living vicariously. They found that parents who had experienced unresolved disappointment from their own past, particularly from their own childhood, but not necessarily childhood, could just be from their recent past, did feel more pride and take more fulfillment when they could bask in their children's successes or their children's glory. Watching their child succeed, Nelson, according to the researchers, actually helped heal their parents' emotional wounds.
Well, it's funny because in psychology, you can make all these conjectures, whereas in history, all we have to do is look back to the past and we see the truth in all of this. We don't have to guess in history. I mean,
we just use language, right? We dress it up with fancy words and conclusions.
Well,
the researchers went on. Let me just finish my thought. Many parents, quote, see their kids as extensions of themselves, and watching their child do something they couldn't or didn't do reduces their regrets about their own past. Now, I will say this. In this article, where it talks about that research from the Netherlands about 10 years ago, they go on to give some really cool...
27% of Americans report that they have become estranged from a close family member, and the overwhelming majority of that 27% is parental.
Now, don't scare me like that, Nelson. Don't scare me like that, Nelson.
I'm just saying. I wonder. And you look back throughout history, as I was alluding to. You look at noble families at the courts at St. James or Versailles, the pressure placed on those families, and the English royalty. You look at American patriarchal families. I remember Franklin Roosevelt said of his kids, it's a horrible life they have to lead, right? Because
he meant that literally.
Yeah, he said it's just really hard to be connected to this family.
Yeah,
to my family, it's really difficult.
Well,
I go back to the story of Siddhartha and the Buddha. Siddhartha's father, when he was born, they had him examined by a soothsayer, and they recognized the markings of a distinguished being. And he was either going to be a great military leader and political leader, a world emperor, or a
con artist.
or a great teacher and a spiritual leader.
How about that?
And his father really did everything he could, everything in his power, to push
the spiritual
him.
side?
No, just push him to the political side.
Opposite of Darwin's dad.
His father was a king. He loved the idea of his son being a great military
clergy.
Political leader.
Yeah.
Well, the Buddha leaves, after, he sort of settles into palace life, but there's this gnawing at him, this desire to see the world, to find out the meaning of life and the reason for suffering and all. So he goes, and he is forgiven in Buddhism for the 7-year separation. And then he leaves again after he comes home, and he is forgiven for all of that separation. It's not even a question or a problem. He is forgiven for that. In fact, in many of the Eastern philosophies, you have to separate from all of your relationships, from everything, and go off and become a forest dweller and find the answers. Now, some people can return and teach, and that's fine. But for a lot of people, monks, right, priests, they have to separate. So I always think about that pressure that the Buddha's father applies. Like, dude, you're going to be a military leader. He's like, no, sorry, man. I'm going to follow my own path.
Harvard graduate Jennifer Wallace did an interview not too long ago with the Harvard Gazette about a relatively new book of hers called, oddly enough, Never Enough. It has a broken pencil on the cover, by the way, with a very sharp point, I might add.
The book was making a sharp point? Or
the pencil. When achievement culture becomes toxic and what we can do about it. And she says, look, I wanted to focus on the demographic that seems to be, at least when she was writing this book, maybe 5-10 years ago, to be the most vulnerable to stress and anxiety and depression within a family about achievement. And she said the demographic that kept coming forward in my research was the top 25% of household incomes.
2 national policy reports show that students at these high-performing schools are at risk just behind kids who are in poverty or foster care or who have a parent in prison. They're just below that, so they are really at risk because of the pressure on them?
Yes, because of the excessive pressure to achieve. In our country, we generally believe that wealth equals well-being. But what these two national policy reports found was that kids in the top roughly 25% of household income, so that's about 130,000 a year or more, those kids were now 2 to 6 times more likely to suffer from clinical levels of anxiety, depression, and substance abuse disorder than the average American teen.
That was $130,000 per year then. Maybe it's 170 now. I don't know what you'd expect from an upper middle class family. And she said, what I was noticing is that oftentimes the parents were trying to be teachers, coaches, and parents. Sometimes they were literally teachers, public school teachers, K through 12, or even college professors. This sort of fits in line with my own family, right? Mm-hmm. Myself as a college professor, my wife as a 25-year counselor in elementary school. Our salaries together, push this upper middle class bracket. Yes, she was saying in this book that these kids, counterintuitively, are under more stress and more pressure, and they're more likely to report feeling down, lower self-esteem, anxiety, never feeling like they're doing enough.
It's strange because
ironically,
that's not.
yeah,
I see that's not counterintuitive to me. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but to me, if I'm not looking at it, I guess logically, if I'm just looking at it as someone who's trying to give and do the best for my daughter and give them the best life possible, I think back to my life growing up. My parents probably didn't make $170,000 in 20 years. How in the world can I get it wrong with the money I'm making, with the house I'm offering my kids, with the food I give them, with the coaching, with the supplemental instructions, tutoring if they needed it, always being at the PTA, always being a part of the PTA, always being at every event, all of it. My kids don't miss a beat. They don't miss a birthday party. They don't miss anything. And yet to think that despite all of that I'm doing, clearly sacrificing so that they live and flourish and become a high-functioning adult, because I won't be on the earth forever, that I could still not be doing enough, that maybe I'm doing too much, as my son likes to say, Dad, you're doing too much.
Yeah, and I do, I go back and forth. Sometimes I feel like as a father, my sacrifices aren't seen. As a mother, my wife's aren't seen, that they're not appreciated. And to be fair, these are kids, right? So I don't know that they can ever know or see. And then on the other end of that, I think, man, they say it's a sacrifice, but in reality, we quite enjoy having these children.
Yeah, I use the word sacrifice with air quotes because honestly, I enjoy going to her practices. I enjoy going to Myrtle Beach.
And so maybe that's maybe that's part of the rub, is making sure our children know that it's not a sacrifice, in so much as I'm choosing this life.
Yeah.
This is my path, and this is what I'm choosing, and I enjoy that. And making that clear to them.
Yeah, maybe being a little more honest and transparent about it. Saying, look, instead of saying, hey, I take you to practice, I take you to Myrtle Beach, and we go out to dinner, hey, I like it too.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
I wonder if we should talk about other cultures. I know we've been talking about the American soccer mom or the American experience when it comes to spending money or being achievement-oriented or being involved in the minutia of our kids' activities, whether they be sports or intellectual or social endeavors. But, not that long ago, there was a woman or two on the cover of Time magazine and some of the other big periodicals here in America called Tiger Moms. Want to maybe just kind of touch on this idea of overparenting or applying pressure in other cultures and how we view that on the other side.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third leg of our show today. We're talking about soccer moms living vicariously through our kids, especially where it concerns sports and academics. Applying pressure. How do we know when we're applying too much pressure? How do we know when the pressure we apply on our children becomes toxic? We've been talking quite a bit about American toxicities, American overparenting. Nelson, there's got to be some conversation about parenting across cultures, doesn't it? The tiger mom kind of comes to my mind, right?
The tiger mom debate has captured the attention of parents all across the country. From the cover of Time magazine to the bestseller lists, Amy Chua's book, Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother, about strict Asian parenting has exploded. Now, our Juju Chang sat down with the author to talk about this uproar.
There's a lot of controversy. Robin, I call myself a tiger cub because I was raised by tiger parents. I think you were too.
Oh, my parents were very strict.
Right?
Very loving, but very strict.
Loving
yes.
but strict. No play dates, no slumber parties, and that's part of the controversy. But is this style of uber tough love parenting actually good for kids? I always swore I would never raise my kids that strictly. But when I spoke to Amy Chua about the controversy caused by headlines like Chinese mothers are superior, she says she's been misunderstood.
It's universal.
Right.
I would say
It
this.
seems to work, they would say, but
I
at
would-
what cost?
I would say that in, Eastern traditions and Eastern philosophies, Eastern cultures, Eastern civilization, the focus of the family is not on the child.
Yeah.
The focus is on the elder.
Okay.
Right. I feel
The patriarch.
I feel like this problem, it's in different wrapping, but it ends up being the same, right? Because when the focus is on the parent overtly, when it's clearly on the parent, clearly on the elders, clearly on
Yeah, whoever it is, grandma, the great aunt, yeah.
you as a child still feel that pressure of making sure that
doing everything
you're
right.
doing everything right, you're living up to the family name, you're honoring the family. These are cultures where suicide is
Rampant.
I don't know about rampant, but we have the suicide forest. I'm sure you've seen that documentary, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The only way
It's concerning.
the only way that you can restore honor if you bring dishonor onto the family is by removing yourself
From the family.
entirely from the equation. And so there's that pressure is still just as real.
Yeah.
Right. So even though the focus is on the family, the pressure still remains, I think, largely on the child. In the West, I feel like it's, like I said, it's the opposite, but we all end up at the same place where the focus is clearly on our children, on providing for them, and they feel that burden of living up to those expectations.
I just feel there are these two forces at work. Like on the one hand, for the past 20 years, I've been feeling like the powers that be, the intelligentsia, the pundits, the news pundits, the cultural commentarists, they would say, protecting, you're helicoptering, you're bulldozing, you're being too fragile, you're being too soft, you're being too woke. I mean, we still hear that a lot. In fact, the book I just read that I talked about in the last episode, Jonathan Haidt's book, touches on that very point, that parents aren't applying enough pressure. But then on the other hand, you hear just as many people, just as many forces, maybe from a different political rank, saying, well, I think we are putting too much pressure on our kids. We're asking them to do too much. We're living vicariously. God, don't be like a tiger mom, right? Because yes, you might get the results you want, but to what, but is that process ethical? Is that the right way to go about it? Is it okay to make your kids successful, but you've also simultaneously made them overly stressed, depressed, hate themselves, hate spelling bees if they become the greatest spelling?
I think,
where is that balance?
I think both can be true. I always go back to the old joke about millennials and everybody gets a trophy and the perception of this generation.
It's not like the kids who got the trophy were asking for the trophy. I've been thinking about that lately, right? Like people were mad at their kids for taking the participation trophy. And I'm thinking to myself, but it's not like the kids asked for that trophy.
No, it's the whiny boomer parents who are just saying,
and then the
"Give
boomer
it to
parents
me."
gets mad once their kid accepts the trophy.
Well, I don't know if they get mad. I think the other parents might get.
Well, I heard James Harrison, former hardcore linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was driving home from his daughter or his son's like rec soccer or football league, and the son or the daughter had a trophy, and he said, "I just took the damn thing and threw it out the window as we were riding down the road." And said, "You didn't earn this." I was like, "Wow, that's a lot of that's hardcore, man. That's hardcore."
I think both things can be true, and I think both things are true. Anytime there is, a lack of dialogue, right? So when you're saying like,
just do it.
Yeah,
just listen.
Or
I know better.
Whenever there's that lack of dialogue between a parent and a child, no matter if it's, being too easy on them or being too hard on them, if there's not the conversation, hey, how do you feel? What do you need?
Yeah, so it sounds
how
like
can I support
you're going back
you?
to our first episode on parenting and this idea that Diane Baumrind, who was a researcher back 30, 40 years ago, found that there were several types of parenting styles. And the one that seemed to pay the most dividends across, most groups of kids was the authoritative style. Again, where you are somewhat diplomatic and you do enforce rules, but you explain the rules and you remind kids of the rules and you sit down and talk about the rules, as opposed to being too permissive, where it doesn't appear as though there are any rules, or kids are making them up as they go, and they get to pick their own punishment, which is typically nothing. Or the opposite would be the authoritarian parent, right, which is the one that rules with an iron fist, that says, I don't have time to argue with you. I don't negotiate with children. You just do what I say. You're right. I mean, I think authoritative style is probably the best style you can have for most kids. Now, I'm not going to say the authoritative style works in every context. I think I mentioned that one of my former colleagues, Vicki Williams, professor at the school I went to graduate school at Georgia, her research as a graduate student was on whether or not that authoritarian style could work in some situations. And it turned out it worked with certain populations of minorities living, say, in subsidized housing, in areas that were very dangerous, where, you know, mom didn't necessarily have a lot of time at home and she had to keep them safe. And so it's do what I say or else you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get...
Well, let me tell you some of my research as an official.
Oh, as an umpire.
It's umpiring season, and it'll take me. I do flag football as well. Don't do any soccer, but do some basketball. And I've been doing this for 12 years.
Okay.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse.
And so you can spot us coming, right? I got the soccer dad shirt on. You know I'm coming.
It's getting worse.
Really?
Just last year.
My people. These are my people.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Just last year, there was a coach, head coach for a team. I mean, it still almost brings me to tears to talk. It was a horrible experience, right? But I was umpiring a rec league game, and a kid, this is 9 and 10-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my daughter's age.
Wasn't really paying attention to the play or something. I don't know. They did a kid thing. And he ended up getting thrown out at third base, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the ball wasn't even it was still in the infield. I don't know what he was doing, right? Just stupid play.
Wasn't close.
So the first base coach, who was the head coach, the teams, there was a third out. The teams start switching places, and the first base coach runs up to this kid. And you could see the kid get that deer in the headlights look. He was oh shit. And the dad, I assume it was the dad.
I mean, you don't want to be his dad either, but
assume it was the dad. But yeah, grabbed the kid by the collar.
Oh my gosh!
And started just screaming at him.
Yeah, that's a different
in
level.
His face.
That's a different level.
So what are you doing?
And that's clearly over the line, right? I mean, that would be over the line even if it were professional sports.
Yeah, so, I felt really bad because usually what I would do in a situation like that was I would toss the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I admit it, man.
Even if it was the kid's dad, you'd toss him.
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, you're not
But
doing
were
that
you
on
so
my
shocked?
field. I was so shocked and stunned. And then I thought, would it be good for the kid to toss him? It would elevate the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which it needed to be elevated.
Yeah.
And I choked. I just choked.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things you think about where you practice for it in your mind, you prepare for it, and then it's right there.
But you
in front
never
of
really
you
expected to get that bad, probably, do you? Or is that something
I do
now you're thinking about more and more?
I do. And if it's not a coach, the stuff you get from parents, I started making a joke with some parents. I'm like, I just give them a card for my assigner. I'm like, dude, you can see it from there.
Yeah.
Come and you got to be back
so
here.
what I'd like to say in defense of myself, because I don't want people to think I'm being overly toxic or overly crazy on the soccer field. And I mean, you can come and watch for yourself.
I was just saying, if you have to question it, I would look at it.
No, I don't have to. What I tend to do, Nelson, is that I tend to get very excited. I tend to scream loudly. I tend to coach from the sidelines by saying, stay in position, don't cheat, press, back up. You're out of position, Cecilia. Move forward. Help. Nope. Trust your teammates. Let them get the ball to you. Call for it, CC. Talk to your teammates. That's the extent of my coaching. Never do I scream at another player. Never do I curse. Never do I yell at the ump. No, nothing like that. I don't run out on the field. I'm just yelling passionately, trying to give my 2 cents about keeping your position, maintaining shape. In essence, I don't see it much differently than people just shouting from the stands at a professional game, right? Although I realize that I am the loudest. I know I am. And I know that I'm coaching more than even the coach sometimes. And so, when my daughter says, well, Dad, it's confusing because my coach is telling me one thing and you're saying something else that might at that time contradict, I can understand that. I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
I understand that 100%. That would be difficult to keep up with what I'm saying, what the coach is saying in real time, and try to play one of the most difficult positions on the field, midfield. I get it. I understand. And so I definitely have to look inward and do some soul searching and have more conversations with my daughter.
That's good. I don't think a lot of parents would do that. And again, I see them every year. Every year. Last year, somebody was arrested with going on the field with a bat.
Yes, I can't imagine ever getting to that point.
Well, and then with the travel ball, it gets even worse because you have people, like we do tournaments down in Myrtle Beach. People come from all over the country for these baseball tournaments. Yep. And for some, it's cool because they know their teams aren't that good, and it's a week in Myrtle Beach, and that's what they're there for.
But for the ones that expect to win.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. See, we don't even expect to win. But it is expensive. You asked me earlier, what would it cost? It's not $2,000 a month, but is it?
Will it be?
Oh, yeah, easily, especially as she continues going up. And my son may start a travel team. But right now, we can spend $1,000 a month easily.
Yeah.
And again, that's not the base. That's not the jerseys and the money to keep her on the team and the special supplemental coaching that happens 1 or 2 days a week. Again, always led by her. If my daughter says, look, I would like to do this academy that costs $30 a night on Friday nights or whatever, and we feel like, we can do it as a family. We feel like the money's not too exorbitant, and we feel like it's not going to take too much of our family time.
It's important, I think, to let our kids know that we enjoy this too, because if you're not getting anything out of it either, you will end up, I think,
regretting it or
resenting your kids, right? Like every Friday night, I have to be there. Like I guess I'm just kind of too much of a selfish prick. I wouldn't want every single one of my Fridays and Saturdays
to be
consumed before I even woke up on Monday.
And I'm okay, I guess, with it. At age 51, I'll admit it.
Enjoy it.
Maybe I'm older. Maybe it's because, I had kids older, and I'm blessed to have had kids since I started so late. My wife and I both, she's younger than me, but we started late, and we're blessed to have 2 healthy, high-functioning kids, and maybe that's it. Anyone who knows me from my past, my 20s, 30s, heck, even all the way up to my 40s, when I met my wife, knows that I was very selfish. I only wanted to do things for myself, right? I wouldn't commit to anything or to anyone.
Yeah.
And so once I met and married my wife, I went all in. Yeah, there's that part of me that knows I enjoy all this. I'm obsessed with it all.
There you go.
I'm obsessed being a family man, and I just want to make sure that my daughter and son are equally obsessed with what they're doing. Again, it didn't have to be soccer. I never played soccer. It could have been flag football. It could have been bowling. It could have been anything.
Maybe it will be.
Whatever they pick, I'm all in on it. And,
except bowling. Let's not. Come on. That's just weird.
Yeah. Well, anything else, Nelson, we need to talk about before we wrap this show up today?
I think that is a wrap, man.
I don't think we've solved anything. I don't think we've found the line between over-parenting or over-pressing our kids and under-pressing it. What do you think? Some takeaways as both a parent, an umpire, as someone who clearly hasn't put too much pressure on their kids, because that's why they're no good at anything, as you tell it.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. They're great at what they do.
I worry, just as a society, from a political perspective and a policy perspective, that we
making great the enemy of good.
No, I just worry that we are using our kids to make other people rich and to subsidize our choices in so many ways. That is to say that the people who are making money in this endeavor, putting on these tournaments, we're making these people millionaires. And as long as people aren't being sold a bill of goods, as long as people are realistic about the percentage of children who get the full ride,
get the NIL deals,
get the NIL deals,
scholarships,
and get even further than that. As long as there are 20 Olympic soccer players.
Yeah,
that's it.
No,
as
no
long as
doubt in my
people
mind.
are realistic about that, that's fine. I do worry that there's a societal pressure to do more, to be more, and I see it with my kids in college. This pressure of, how am I going to find $120,000 as an 18-year-old to pay for the school that I want to go to?
And it's not going to be through a D1 soccer scholarship.
Right. And
right. It's just not.
You just have to worry that the expectations of society, the financial pressures that we're placing on the family and on the youngest of our citizens, it's untenable and it's unfair. And that would be my only worry. I'd ask you for a mental diagnosis.
Well, I think mentally, I think what all of this tells me is that parents need to get their own emotional shit in order quickly.
Before we can even diagnose the bigger problem.
But get that stuff out of the way first, right?
Yeah.
To know if there really is, get that stuff out of the way first. And so that's what I got to work on is me first and foremost before I can even, venture into giving my daughter what she needs in terms of a supportive dad or, quote, a pseudo coach on the drive home. I don't have any of the answers, Nelson, but what I do have is the ability to say, I might not be doing it as well as I could. And I have the humility with which to listen, even to a 9-year-old.
Well,
and
I
say,
guess
you know what, upon 24 hours of reflection, maybe I didn't handle the conversation with my daughter right last night. I left it kind of lingering. She didn't know last night whether I was going to ever go watch her play again in a tournament or ever try to coach her or not. She didn't know because I didn't know. But I think after, airing this out with you a little bit and our audience, all 50 to 150 of you who are going to listen inevitably, I feel better about what I'm going to do this afternoon. I feel like I'm going to start by just reminding my daughter that I'm her dad. And what I want to make sure of is that she always feels heard, she always feels respected, she always feels protected, and always feels like Dad has her best interest in mind, not my own necessarily.
Well, I think for us, for you, that's a great place to start. And for us, I think that's a great place to finish.
Yeah. Hey, man, I do appreciate your time, Nelson. Thank you for doing this with me. We've got
stress coming up.
Maybe 1 to 3 more episodes before we finish out our first full year, ladies and gentlemen. This was episode 49. 52 episodes we've got slotted. Got a special guest, I hope, coming on episode 52 to talk a little bit about Sigmund Freud again, among other things. Mr. David Livingston Smith. We're hoping we can book him and get him in here so we can get him recorded, if not live. Dr. David Livingston Smith is going to share some of his insights about Sigmund Freud. I know that's where we started this podcast, right, with the life and times of Sigmund Freud. And admittedly, I may have been a little too harsh on Freud. I'm hoping Dr. Smith can come in and
set you right.
Set me right. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening, and I hope that you will like, share, and continue to be a part of this podcast in any way you feel like you can get value. Thanks again. Thanks,
Bye,
Nelson.
everybody.